Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. So, the Vegas Golden Knights have been the premier hockey team in Las Vegas. Vegas Golden Knights had an interesting start to the 2021-2022 season, had an interesting start to the 2022-2023 NHL season. And as much as people who are here in Las Vegas want to focus on the current product at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, what we're going to do here on tonight's episode of Vegas Hockey Hub is we're actually going to focus on the development system. And more importantly, we're going to focus on one player in Vegas's development system, one person who really should be spotlighted in the Henderson Silver Knights out at the amazing Dollar Loan Center in Henderson, Nevada. And that one person I want to spotlight, who I have right in front of you, is defenseman Kaeden Korczak. Now, to give you a little bit of a background on Kaeden Korczak, he came from Yorkton, Saskatchewan, out there in Canada. He is 6'4", 190 pounds, was drafted in the second round of the 2019 NHL draft by your Vegas Golden Knights. So he is a player who has been playing professional hockey since 2020. As a matter of fact, he has appeared in 3 seasons for the Henderson Silver Knights, and he's actually had a few amount of games for the Vegas Golden Knights over the past 2 seasons. So Kaeden Korczak, at the age of 21 years old, has already had experience in the AHL. He's had experience in the NHL, and he has actually had experience playing in the World Championships. He actually played for Team Canada when they won their silver medal in the World Junior Championship in 2021. So Kaeden Korczak is a player you have to watch moving forward. So the Kelowna Rockets, he spent 5 seasons playing in the WHL. His best performing season was in 2019-2020 when he had 49 points in 60 games playing in the WHL. So when he gets drafted in the second round by the Vegas Golden Knights, when he essentially was their top draft pick in the 2019 NHL draft, there was a lot of high expectations on Kaeden Korczak because of all the hype that's going to be around his name. Because once again, keep in mind, Peyton Krebs, who was one of their high draft picks in 2019, he is no longer on the roster. He was traded to Jack Eichel, which, by the way, I'm going to mention very quickly. The Jack Eichel trade was a win-win for Buffalo and a win-win for Vegas. We did an episode on that here on Vegas Hockey Hub. We'll go look on the link right down below to check that out. So there's a lot of expectations on 21-year-old Kaeden Korczak because he is the highest draft pick from the 2019 draft class who is still playing for Vegas. So after signing an entry-level deal in December of 2019, he played a few games, a cup of coffee for 2020-2021, had 2 points in 11 games. 2021-2022, he had 14 points in 47 games, 28 penalty minutes, but he actually played a few games in the playoffs for Henderson in the AHL that season. And so far in 2022-2023, in the limited amount of games that have been played by Henderson, he has actually been scoring some assists. He's actually projected to have 24 points this season for the Henderson Silver Knights. That'd be a career high for Kaeden Korczak if he continues the pace he is at now. I also want to very quickly mention that Kaeden Korczak has a younger bro named Ryder Korczak, who was drafted by the New York Rangers two years later in the 2021 NHL entry draft. He is playing for New York right now. He is actually in the AHL. So Kaeden Korczak is one player I wanted to mention because the Henderson Silver Knights have a good amount of talent on this organization. They actually have some people that you have to watch out for out in Henderson. So Kaeden Korczak is one of them. I will say Danny Chaka would be another guy that you have to watch out for. He was drafted in the second round of the 2021 NHL draft by Vegas. He played in the KHL in 2020 for CSK Moscow. And speaking of that, talking about the KHL's relationship with the NHL, I actually made a video about that as well. Go check that out on our YouTube channel, Vegas Hockey Hub, or go on the PR Connections Radio YouTube channel, and you can watch that video I made about the KHL and the NHL's relationship and how the KHL has become a farm system for the NHL. And watching Danny Chaka play for the Henderson Silver Knights, he has been a solid defenseman for Henderson. The way he's been able to transition going to the NHL, playing professional hockey in North America for the first time, it'll be interesting to see how he does. Somebody else I briefly want to mention is Lucas Cormier. Now, he is someone who is a prospect for Vegas. He was drafted a few years ago, and he is actually his first time playing professional hockey for the Henderson Silver Knights. And so far, he has actually been putting up some solid performances. They played up against Tucson. They took on Bakersfield. They took on Ontario. There's been some good back and forth action involving him and Korczak, Chaka. There's been some interesting situations there. Leighton Ayek, who they also have as a young 21-year-old, he has spent his third season with the Henderson Silver Knights. He is a solid guy who can put on the back end out there in Las Vegas if they had to. So, really, the Henderson Silver Knights have a bunch of really good defensemen. I mentioned Kaeden Korczak. I mentioned Danny Chaka. I talked about Lucas Cormier. And Leighton Ayek is someone I wanted to briefly mention. But there's two more defensemen that if I didn't mention, I wouldn't be giving them any justice. So, Zachary Hayes, who's a defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights, he is actually the oldest out of the bunch. So him being an undrafted free agent, he wasn't drafted. He signed an entry-level deal with the Vegas Golden Knights. He is actually the oldest out of everybody in the starting lineup for Henderson. But his maturity is what has impressed so far. Despite making a few games with the Vegas Golden Knights, actually making his debut with the Vegas Golden Knights not that long ago, Zachary Hayes had 66 penalty minutes and 10 points in his first full-time season playing in the AHL. And he's actually been putting up some stellar stats in Henderson to start the 2022-2023 AHL season. So Zachary Hayes has had experience playing in the NHL. You've had Kaeden Korczak, who's had experience playing in the NHL. Also, Braden Packle, who is the captain of the Henderson Silver Knights, he has had a short cup of coffee playing in the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights. And he also has a family background in the NHL. His grandfather played minor league hockey in the 1950s. His cousin played in the NHL for the Boston Bruins. So it kind of runs in the family there. And his most recent season playing for the Henderson Silver Knights, he had over 90 penalty minutes and 11 points in 65 games for Henderson. Now, a lot of people will look at statistics when it comes to the AHL, and they'll wonder why someone like Kaeden Korczak, for example, who is the case study for this video, people will kind of wonder, why is his stats low in the AHL? Why are certain people who are a defenseman, a forward, a center, a wing, a goalie, why are their stats in the AHL don't look as dominant as when they are in the NHL, when they're in the OHL, when they're in the WHL? Why is it when you watch an AHL hockey game, it does not look like an NHL game does? Well, as somebody who has attended plenty of AHL games, whether it was at the Orleans Arena or if it was at the Dollar Loan Center up in Henderson, I will tell you exactly why AHL hockey games look different compared to NHL games. The main reason is that the pace is slower. The pace is not as fast, is not as detailed oriented as the NHL is. You can actually kind of trace the puck a little bit better. You're not going to see a Connor McDavid just skating right down the ice, getting to an open net. No, in the AHL, the pace is a lot slower than the NHL does. That's a lot of times because you have guys who are 18, 19, 20 years old who are going from college hockey and junior hockey to being a professional hockey player. So a transition is going to take a while. The second reason why points really do not matter much when it comes to the AHL is because the way NHL scouts look at talent, they're not looking at a score sheet. NHL scouts are not looking at how many goals you put up in Henderson. They're not looking up at how many assists you put up with the Utah Grizzlies. They're not looking up at how many points you put up with the Idaho Steelheads. What scouts are looking for when it comes to the NHL roster, what scouts are looking for when you're trying to get a call up to the NHL, they're not looking at your points and assists and goals. What they're looking for is, do you have certain intangibles to get to the NHL? How is your footwork? How is your hockey IQ? How is your ability to go from offense to defense? Are you a 200-foot player that can play all aspects of the hockey game? That is what NHL scouts, that's what people who are in hockey who get paid a lot of money are looking for in the AHL. It's not about goals and assists. It's about what can your talent come to the NHL for? What does your talent transition over to the NHL? So when someone like Kaeden Korczak last year only had 14 points playing for Henderson, somebody on a basis level, just looking at it from a 50,000-foot view, would say that's a very disappointing season for a 20-year-old defenseman. But when you actually go into the trees and you actually start looking at a 50-foot view, you actually realize that scouts are really comparing, what is his skating ability? What is his ability to crash the net? What is his ability to shoot from the slot? What is his ability to pass the puck? What is your ability that can transition from the AHL and go to the NHL? That is what scouts look for. That is what the NHL executives look for. It is what those NHL players get paid a lot of money for. It's those intangibles that a score sheet does not tell you. It is those characteristics that a plus minus does not equivalent to at the major level. So as we're talking about the Henderson Silver Knights and as we're talking about the minor league hockey here on Vegas Hockey Hub, here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. I want to quickly diverge for a second because I want to give a shout out to PR Connections Radio, all the talent and all the shows that are being broadcasted on PR Connections Radio. You got Cozy Stone, who had a fantastic show she had on very recently. She brought on an amazing guest, put on some fantastic content. So shout out to Cozy Stone. And you also had For the Love of Business. They have those two hosts that are going to be doing For the Love of Business. Those two are incredible at what they do. Want to give a shout out to them. And also to Guy Dawson, the founder of PR Connections Radio. Hey, if it wasn't for him, this show would not exist. So I want to give a shout out to Guy Dawson. So back to the conversation that we're having. Somebody in the chat mentioned how is their speed, how do they crash the net? Exactly. That is what the scouts get paid so much money for. They want to know, all right, what is your style of play? Do you physically engage forwards or do you lay back? Are you someone that wants to crash the net and want to pound the puck? Or are you someone who's going to stay back at the blue line and slap 100-mile-an-hour slap shots at the goalie's head. When you're on defense, are you going to sit right in front of the net? Are you going to sit in front of the crease and protect your goalie and make sure nobody gets in front to screen and block out the goaltender? Or are you going to be sitting in front and create an opportunity for a forward to get behind you and get an easy one-on-one opportunity? Those are intangibles. Those are skills that NHL executives and NHL scouts look at when it comes to a young 20-year-old defenseman, a young 21-year-old defenseman. When it comes to skating, if you're a 6'5", 6'6" skating, they're not really going to want to see how fast you can skate. More importantly, they want to see, are you someone who's going to fall down constantly? Are you someone who's going to have to watch his skating ability? Or are you someone who's going to be very comfortable skating on the ice and you can use your skating ability to knock people down on the ground? Are you going to have your skating ability? Are you going to be able to maneuver your way around the ice and be able to use your body and use your pure size to your advantage? That's the reason why someone like Nicholas Hague, for example, who is a 6'6" defenseman, is so valuable to the Vegas Golden Knights, because his size is an advantage, not a negative for Vegas. And with Kaeden Korczak being 6'4", that's actually an advantage for Vegas as well. That's an above average size for a defenseman. And what kind of defenseman are you? That's something the NHL really wants to find out. What kind of defenseman are you in hockey? Because there are 4 types of defensemen that are in the NHL today. There is the first type of defenseman, who what they call an offensive-minded defenseman. Someone who wants to put the puck in the back of the net. Someone who kind of doesn't focus on defense, but instead they focus on getting to the blue line, doing slap shots. There's someone who wants to pass the puck around. Someone who wants to focus more on the offensive side of the game instead of the defensive side. And there's been positives and negatives to being an offensive-minded defenseman. The positive is that you're going to score goals, you're going to put up assists, you're going to have a lot of points in the NHL, but the negative is that your plus-minus is not going to be that great, and you actually could become a liability on defense because of how often you're going to be getting onto the offensive side versus being on defense and protecting the goalie. Second type of defenseman is the defensive-minded defenseman, the pure defenseman, an old-school defenseman, someone who will score 1 to 2 goals a year, but is a brick wall on defense. Think of someone like Brayden McNabb for the Vegas Golden Knights, for example. Someone who doesn't put up a lot of goals, they don't shoot a lot on the blue line, but what they do best is laying back, sitting in front of the crease, and making sure nobody gets to the goaltender. Someone who's going to pretty much be a brick wall for anyone around the crease, and it's going to make a very bad day for everyone involved. So that's the second type of defenseman in the NHL. The third type of defenseman is the two-way defenseman. Someone like Alex Pietrangelo, for example. Someone who is great on offense and is great on defense. Somebody that can jump on both sides very fluently, and someone who's very efficient at playing offense and defense at the same time. These are actually where some of the most elite defensemen in hockey are actually at. Elite defensemen are able to play offense and score goals, but also sit in front of your goaltender and make sure that nobody gets around him and puts pucks in the back of the net. And the fourth and final defenseman is what I like to call a ghost defenseman. This is someone who's under the radar, someone who's not flashy, someone who's not going to get much attention, but what they do best is sacrificing their body to protect a slap shot. What they do best is when your goaltender gets somebody to touch them, they're the one who immediately interferes and starts fighting them. This is the type of defenseman that goes up and defends your player every single time. Think of it, for example, like Ben Hutton for the Vegas Golden Knights. He is not someone that most people outside of Vegas is going to know. He is someone that most people outside of hockey is not going to recognize. But man, Ben Hutton is a fantastic defenseman when you understand his attributes and what he does well. He is someone who's willing to drop the gloves if he has to. He is a defenseman who's willing to protect Logan Thompson, willing to protect Robin Lehner, willing to protect Aiden Hill if somebody chooses to mess with them. If somebody crashes into the boards and goes after a teammate, Ben Hutton is that type of guy to go after him. Every team has a Ben Hutton. They have a defenseman who's willing to be a team player, a defenseman who is willing to make the sacrifice and is willing to be a teammate and a team player for your organization. Now, I want to address that when it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, because there are 4 defensemen who match that category very well. As a matter of fact, there's 4 defensemen I can say very confidently who fit that description in Las Vegas. Now, the first one, which is the offensive-minded defenseman, someone who really wants to put the puck in the back of the net, someone who really wants to make it all about putting the puck first. And that is defenseman Lucas Cormier, who, by the way, put up 70 goals for the Charlottetown Islanders in junior hockey. This is a guy who played in World Juniors for Team Canada and actually had a goal for Team Canada in the World Junior Championship in 2022. So Lucas Cormier is a very offensive-minded defenseman, and if you understand Lucas Cormier, him only being 20 years old, it's going to be hard to really have him not be an offensive-minded defenseman after all the goals he scored in his career playing in the KMJHL, and him also being a first-team All-Star and winning the Emile Bouchard Trophy as the league's best defenseman. So Lucas Cormier is the offensive-minded defenseman out there for the Henderson Silver Knights. The second one is the defensive-minded defenseman. It is the guy that, once again, is not that flashy. He's not going to get that much attention, but he is someone that is going to be standing in front of the goaltender, and he is going to be a guy who's going to be a brick wall for the foreseeable future. That is who I say Kaeden Korczak is going to become. When you examine what he has for the Henderson Silver Knights, he is someone who has a positive plus-minus. He is someone who doesn't turn over the puck that much. He is someone who could really become an elite defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights for the future. And with Kaeden Korczak only being 21 years old, he is someone who could be a good future asset for Vegas long term. So Lucas Cormier is an offensive-minded defenseman. Kaeden Korczak is your pure defenseman, a defensive-minded defenseman. And then you have a two-way defenseman, someone who could play both sides of that, and that's Danny Chaka. He actually had 39 points last season, playing his first season of professional hockey in North America. This is a guy who has put up plenty of points in his career, but he also has a very well defensive rating, and he is someone who in the KHL put up stellar numbers. So Danny Chaka could be an Alex Pietrangelo up there in Henderson. And then the ghost or the team player is what I would say Leighton Ayek is. He has not had a single goal for the Henderson Silver Knights. He is not on the top line. He is not someone that's going to overly impress you. However, Leighton Ayek is someone who has been able to produce when it comes to helping the team out. Leighton Ayek is someone who I believe could be a team player for Henderson and potentially down the line be a team player for Las Vegas. So we have about 5 minutes left here on the show for Vegas Hockey Hub. So I want to very quickly recap something that happened very recently with the Henderson Silver Knights, something that I believe everyone here needs to know about. So the Henderson Silver Knights, they've been playing a few games. They've actually been doing some action up in Henderson for the Dollar Loan Center. But one part that actually got my attention And one part I want everyone here to know is the Henderson Silver Knights, their coaching staff has a bunch of former NHL players on that coaching staff. As a matter of fact, when you examine Henderson and who they have to help Henderson, it really proves to me that the Henderson Silver Knights got a lot of talent coming their way. And someone that I believe could be a valuable asset for them would actually be Joel Ward. Now, Joel Ward is an assistant coach for the Henderson Silver Knights, but if you understand his backstory and understand where he came from, he is actually one of the best decisions that they could have had. Joel Ward was an 11-year veteran in the NHL. This is a guy who played for Nashville, played for Washington, played for San Jose. This is a guy who played over 700 games in the NHL. This is a guy who also represented Canada in the World Championship back in 2014. So, if you are a player in the AHL, if you're someone who wanted to learn a lot about the NHL, if you're someone who wanted to learn a lot about the game, Joel Ward would be somebody you definitely need to talk to because of the amount of experience that he had in the NHL. Jamie Heward, who is also an assistant coach for the Henderson Silver Knights, he was a first-round draft pick by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and as a defenseman, he played a total of 1,278 games throughout his entire career. 300 of those, by the way, were in the NHL. So you have a bunch of experienced veteran coaches that are helping the Henderson Silver Knights out. You have Fred Brathwaite, who is their goaltender coach. This is a guy who also played in the NHL. This is a guy who played 250 games in the NHL, playing for Edmonton, Calgary, Columbus. He did a very well job in his career and is somebody that you could definitely learn a lot from if you are a young goaltender like Jari Patara, for example. So I just wanted to very quickly mention that on this show, because if you are a young 20-year-old, if you're a young 21-year-old out there in Henderson, I believe that having all of these assistant coaches who played well over 500 games in the NHL, if you have all of these veteran staff out there in Henderson, it will make you better as a result. It will make you better when it comes to the roster, when it comes to the staff, when it comes to creating the organization. It is a lot better when you have veterans in the locker room. And I also want to mention Michael Hutchinson, who, by the way, is a veteran in his own right. He's actually the oldest player on the team, and he is the backup goaltender in Henderson. So that was another fantastic episode of Vegas Hockey Hub, talking about the Henderson Silver Knights, talking about the team out there in Henderson. My advice, go out to Henderson, go to the Dollar Loan Center, watch the Henderson Silver Knights all season long. Go support minor league hockey. It is one of the best experience you are ever going to feel. If you get a chance to go down to Dollar Loan Center, you actually will get to see the Southern Nevada Hall of Fame. That is actually at the Dollar Loan Center as well. And you also will get to see 60 minutes of some of the best professional hockey you will have ever. So, this was an episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. Follow me on social media at IanRakelli18 and follow the show at Vegas Hockey Hub. And don't forget to support PR Connections Radio at PR Connections Radio or going to the website prconnectionsradio.com. So until next time, it's go watch hockey, go support minor league hockey, and go Knights go. Have a good one.